And we're live.
Amazing.
Amazing. Hi, Carine. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing? So good to be here. Thanks for including me.
Yes, I'm very excited to chat with you today. This is the June Founder Series with Carine Carmy, CEO and founder of Origin. Um, Excited to just chat, 20, 30 minutes, ask you a couple questions, and thought it would be helpful to first better understand maybe like a 60-second elevator pitch on what Origin does.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I'm a big fan of JOON. So anyone watching, if you're not using it already, you're behind the times. No, but really excited to share a little bit about Origin. We are physical therapy designed for women and mothers. And unfortunately, the reality today is that there are millions of women who are experiencing incredibly common but often overlooked issues. Everything from painful sex and penetration to really challenging postpartum recovery. And so many of these issues can actually be treated with physical therapy. And I'm actually not a PT. I came from the business world and digital health. And once we started learning about this work, it's really eye-opening. It's the standard of care in so many other countries, but in the US, I think we still have a stigma around vaginal and pelvic health, but this is really the missing piece. And so we have locations in LA right now. We're expanding throughout California, and we launched telehealth this year and really just on a mission to help women feel their best through every stage of life.
Beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you. And I know you're really passionate about health and wellness. We used to do yoga together. You've
Yeah.
come, and then you've also come from the healthcare world. Can you tell me a little bit more about the passion and the founding story behind how Origin came to be? I found it really interesting in terms of how the moving pieces came together.
Yeah, it was a lot of serendipity and timing, but I've spent my career in digital healthcare and technology, and was most recently at a health startup in San Francisco, and I was moving back down to LA to be closer to family, and reconnected with a friend of mine from high school, Nona, who's now one of my co-founders, and she was experiencing a lot of postpartum issues that no one prepared her for. Everything from incontinence, so trouble controlling her bladder, to neck and shoulder pain. Her abs were separated. And, this is someone who has access to amazing healthcare. And so she's like, what does this mean? Why is this happening? And she Googled around in desperation and found a physical therapist and was really able to completely change her care. And unfortunately, I had a history of painful sex when I was in my 20s and living in New York, and went to a bunch of different doctors, and no one was able to tell me what was going on. And so we started connecting the dots and looking at the research. And we got really angry because we're like, wait, this is so obvious. This is the standard of care. And, just looking at incontinence, which is, the leaking issue today in the US, it's a $16 billion industry. And so women are either being told, go wear adult diapers or go have surgery. And those are your only two options. But obviously movement is medicine. And we know that physical therapy is the first line evidence-based treatment for this and so many other issues that impact women from, the early 20s and even before that through menopause. And so we knew there was nothing else we could do with our time. And I think on a personal note for me, I've been really realizing over the last kind of decade or so, just how much I've become disassociated from my body. And how much our bodies and our minds are super connected. And I know this is nothing new for, the JOON and wellness community, but it was kind of personally experiencing that and understanding what that was meaning for my health and my wellness. And so on a personal note, it's just been such a joy and a privilege to get to understand my body better and be able to bring that information to other people so that when issues do come up, they're not living in silence or suffering for too long.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think, we've been really excited about the companies that we've been partnering in this space, from Modern Fertility to Lola, who have focused on some stuff that's maybe stigmatized previously, and a lot of products that were previously designed by men. And now it's been amazing to see so many women coming into these roles and founding these companies, and
Yeah.
really solving a lot of the problems that people were maybe not ready to speak about. I'm curious because I've also experienced this connection to like the body and mind,
Yeah.
and in today's world, we used to take yoga together in person.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me personally to get in the flow of this like digital offering, and I know you guys kind of went through your own learning curve where you
Yeah.
started your telemedicine, and then now you're back to the physical space.
Yeah.
Is there anything you could share about that process and where you see the future in terms of the blend between digital and then in-person experiences, especially as it pertains to like healthcare and preventative care?
Yeah, I think for us, we had always planned to have a digital experience, and obviously COVID accelerated that for us and for many other companies. And it was really eye-opening because you think, okay, how do you do physical therapy online? What does it actually mean? But aside from the manual therapy, so much of what happens in physical therapy and really other modalities too, but particular PT is both education and therapeutic exercise, and really this deeper connection to self and body that ultimately unlocks your healing plan. And so what we saw was that, in some ways, virtual is even more effective for some people, because if you remove the touch, all of a sudden you're more deeply connected to yourself and you're not relying on someone else to
Mm,
kind of like massage away your pain. And so it's not to say that there isn't room and space for in-person care or in-person services across the board, but I think it's just an interesting, different way to supplement the care program. And what we have found, I think, is true and is a trend that you're seeing in digital health more broadly. Whereas the first kind of wave of digital health was like, let's take the real world and move it online, right? So let's just kind of replicate it and shift that. Now the question is, how do we design something that's couldn't have been done in person, that is really uniquely suited for a digital experience, whether that's through community or through content or through more scalable unique programs. And so I'm really excited for this next wave of digital healthcare, because I think the solutions are going to be far more innovative than what we saw in the early years, where it was like, let's just make it look and feel better than what you expected before.
that's interesting. And from a team perspective, how are you investing in digital versus your physical digital expansion versus your physical expansion?
We think about ourselves as an omni-channel business, and so we will continue to have locations in key markets, and it's important for many reasons. In some cases, you need hands-on therapy. You have acute issues or you have complicated diagnoses, so we want to continue to offer that. And from an insurance perspective, like that's a big part of, we want to make this accessible, and in-person care is really part of that equation. But we're also really starting to build out a provider network, and so we think about both, and we'll keep kind of iterating on that model as time progresses.
I love the approach of the insurance, using insurance for this sort of stuff, because it's so much, and it's a market that we're also focused on tackling. It's like you're paying for this thing, your employer is helping subsidize it, and then you don't really know what's included, and you can derive so much value from some of the stuff, and you can get it for a subsidized rate or a copay.
Totally.
And it can have such a profound impact on your life and your physical and mental health. And it's
Yeah.
amazing to see companies like yours that are now showing people that that's possible.
Right. And look, it really it upsets me. I'm like, I can't get too angry, but so much of the early innovation in digital healthcare was for either concierge, 1% coastal elite services, or only offered through the employer, which I think is a really valuable way to go to market. But you're missing a huge part of the population. And I think one of the reasons physical therapy for the pelvic floor and really for women's needs hasn't taken off to date is because most of the providers, who are incredible, are small business owners. They work for themselves. It's too hard to take insurance. But this is an essential service, right? This is core healthcare. While we like to feel like wellness, like this is true a healthcare service. We're saving the patient, money on potential surgeries. Like, there's really big quality of life and cost implications here. And so it's just so crucial that I think we continue to design within the healthcare system, and make these types of services far more accessible to people across the country.
I love it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions that are a little bit more focused on you as a founder, leader who's taking care of her team, and then also like you being a big fan of the space in general.
Yeah.
What are your favorite health and wellness companies outside of your own right now in this world, and why?
I have so many. Okay, let me start.
Yeah.
So one, I'm just like, I was thinking about my morning this morning, and I'm actually never used to be a big foodie, and I'm still not. Like, I'm kind of a eat to survive person. Like, I'm like busy and rolling, but I started working with Parsley Health recently, and one of the recommendations they gave me after kind of seeing some protein deficiencies was really changing my morning routine. And I'm like now the biggest fan of Vital Proteins, this kind of protein powder,
Yeah.
collagen-based powder. And I'm like, I used to be hungry all the time, and I'm like, okay, I'm full until noon, and I just feel so much high-powered. And so that's one of my favorite, just kind of in the food space. I recently got addicted to Peloton. I'm finally in the cult.
Oh, wow.
They have the bike, so we call it the Peloton, but started using their app, which any person can kind of, you can get on-demand access to. And the content is just incredible and so uplifting. And, it's like what happens, how you do anything is how you do everything. Just like the level of caliber of quality expertise there is so high. And I feel like I'm in a fitness, studio with like the best instructor in the world. So I'm converted, I'm in the cult. It's amazing. So those are kind of a couple. And then a little bit more on like the wellness side. I've been obviously having too much time for podcasts. I like try to walk every day. So, one of my favorite podcasts is Tara Brach. She's a meditation and mindfulness expert, and she just does a really great job of kind of grounding everything, that's happening in the world in like more actionable mindfulness techniques. So that's been awesome. And then,
she's great.
Yeah, she's amazing. I love Mondays, which is a brand I think as well in the employee wellness space. And I love how they're thinking about, bringing in like more wellness into work. And I've even thought about things like, how do I bring smell into my home, or just kind of, like the small things that can have a big impact. And then finally, although this is maybe not safe for work, but I think there's just so much innovation in the sexual wellness space right now. And as we think about kind of like the disconnection that so many people have felt to their bodies, I've just been so excited by brands like Coral or Dipsy, who are making sexual wellness just far more open and comfortable for people to talk about.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. You have an amazing recommendation list. Yeah, no, I can, from the protein, and I know intermittent fasting has been like a big trend, but also for a lot of women, they're actually, hormones are more sensitive, and a lot of people need protein in the morning. And collagen is a great, like, not very inflammatory form of getting that in. The Peloton, do you think you're going to get the bike?
I don't love to bike. So for me, it's more like I love running outside. So I've been using like the running outdoor app. And so I'm like running and they're in my ear and you're like, you got it, so.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's like,
I've seen it. I've seen the advertisements for that. I went from kind of a skeptic of the connected fitness world to now being, these companies are marketed so well. We just signed a new client by the name of Tempo, tempo.fit. And I was in their office 2 weeks ago. It was my first office visit in about 8 months. And it's sort of a mirror competitor. So you go in there and it comes with weights, and it actually gives you direct feedback about whether you're leaning over or whether your knees are over your toes. And it's pretty cool. Like, and that being said, I also did my first group yoga class in a park in Berkeley. And that just got me to recount how much I miss the group experience. And I was thinking about potentially starting a group, doing group classes in LA, social distance in the park. So we'd love to have you.
Yeah, I love that. We got to and there's no conversation with you and I without a shout out to Papo Yoga. So that's been actually my saving grace this quarantine.
We love you, Papo.
Yeah.
No, you got me to, like, after months of not practicing with him, like going in there. And what I loved is he wasn't practicing the poses. He was like, had his face in the camera and was like looking and able to make adjustments to you. And it felt like very personalized.
Yeah. I'll see you on Friday. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm always curious also what, outside, the traditional, like eating protein, going on walks, what's the most unique or out there thing that you do to just make sure you're feeling well and supercharged and your cup is full so you can go out and give to your team?
I'm actually experimenting with something right now called somatic experiencing or somatic therapy. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically this type of therapy that is far more touch-based, or even like not even touch, but somatic. So, you know, I'm still in the midst of it, so I don't know if I'm going to describe it that well, but
Yeah.
like I've had a history of anxiety, you know, throughout my life, and that emerges in my body, and I have chronic IBD. And so like I've always just known that my emotions, you know, feed into my body. And if you don't tackle that, then like, you know, it'll come up in other ways. And so I'm like a big believer in therapy and talk therapy. I've done that for years, and it keeps me grounded, and, you know, to your point, like how I can show up in the world in a much better way. But I had been feeling like I was hitting a wall recently with talk. Like I'm like, okay, I
Mm.
get these issues, but like what's actually happening? And somatic therapy is really about kind of connecting to either the trauma or the pain or the anxiety or the fear that's actually like in your nervous system when you go into fight or flight or even freeze mode. And some days I'll like be kind of working and I'm like, oh, my shoulders are up, and I'm like, you know, and so actually catching yourself in those moments and learning how to down train your body to feel safe can then have massive impact on, you know, your mind. And it's a little woo-woo, so I live in LA, but like I am loving it, and it's completely I just have felt like since I've started about a couple months ago, I feel much more grounded in my body and even happier. So we'll see.
I love the woo woo.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing. Like even before I was talking to you, I was a little nervous. I was jumping up and down in my room, getting the energy out. And you know, recently watched a film, Israeli independent film documentary called Trips of Compassion,
Mhm.
which was on MDMA assisted therapy.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting in that film was a lot of these people that had suffered their own level of trauma would hold different amounts of tension and energy in different parts of their body. So oftentimes when they would have these, you know, psychedelic or drug induced
Okay.
experiences, they wouldn't even be talking, but they would be relieving tension. They would be shaking. They would be moving out the energy. So I'm a big believer in
Totally.
the connection between your body and mind.
Yeah. And there's a lot of research. I mean, there's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is how we store trauma in our nervous system and in our tissues. And like the research is there, but I think there's just different modalities in how you tackle that. And we even see that in our own work. You know, we're working with the pelvic floor, and especially if you've had, let's say, a traumatic sexual experience or, you know, delivery. And a lot of people are like, yeah, do Kegels, make your pelvic floor stronger. But sometimes you actually need to learn how to down train and relax your pelvic floor before you can build strength. And I think that's just this general shift in mindset of like, okay, let's learn how to calm down before we start to level up again.
Sorry, I was losing you a
Oh,
little bit,
it's all good.
Carine, but
I'm here.
I think we're back. I was, you know, talking about different substances, and I think it felt like my computer all of a sudden had taken something.
There you
Um,
go.
Speaking of, you know, your what you're doing at Origin, focused on physical, you know, somatic experience, some of the stuff that you do personally to make sure that your cup is full. I'm curious, as you know, we're an employee well-being company, and we've spoken a little bit about this, but would love to maybe share what are the types of things that you guys do in-house at your
Yeah.
company, to make sure that your employees feel supported, to make sure that they feel taken care of, to make sure that they feel like the best selves, so they can then go out and give to your
Yeah.
clients and customers.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think you know, we're starting, but there's obviously so much more we can do. And I think step one actually just starts with, how do we create a space where you can have these conversations at work, right? Like, how do you share vulnerability, or that I'm, you know, experiencing some mental health challenges of, you know, in PT, for example, there's a very high degree of burnout because oftentimes you see, you know, like the speed and the pacing, but then also in our world, what's called compassion fatigue, because you're always giving. And so
Mm.
it's really challenging. And so one, you know, I'm not personally experiencing necessarily these things day to day since I'm not in that line of work, but how do we create a space where people can talk about that and also talk about what they need? And so we actually just started a survey with our team, and we'll see kind of what path we go down. But, you know, would our team find it valuable to have more mindfulness techniques or experts brought into the team, or do we want to have access to group therapy? Or, you know, I'm kind of still co-creating it with our team to make sure it's aligned. But Those are the types of things we're thinking about. And we've definitely brought in some experts in the past. A friend of ours, Samara Zelniker from Mindfulness Matters, helped us with an amazing offsite and really brought, what are the techniques we can use day to day. So that's been, great kind of on the mental health and wellness side. And then I think although this is a little bit different than that, we've really started to invest in our own learning and development program. So that, I think sometimes the stress and also the excitement can come from how do I keep up leveling as these issues get more complex. And in our field, there's just really limited resources for continuing education. And so we really want to be on the frontier of the clinical research and the expert-based knowledge. And so we're constantly bringing in experts who can share what they're learning in the field, and then also create more peer mentorship programs where we can all support each other.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. It's really holistic, and I think I love starting with just the foundation of creating a safe space for everyone to be able to share and be heard and to communicate. I think that's really key. We're coming down on time, and I want to be respectful. I know you have a lot to do. I think we could finish it off asking you, I've read some of your writing around, which I really enjoyed, around digital health and the future of healthcare. And I'm curious, like, that was, I think, before you started Origin, and we're just in the starting phase. Fast tracking to today and looking into the future, what are you most excited about when you think about the future of healthcare and more personalized care?
So much. I feel like we're at this, precipice of change. I think the thing I'm probably most excited about is just the number of women who are entering the space, starting companies. So even in the last year, I remember when I started our business a couple of years ago with our co-founders, I got feedback like, well, isn't women's health just fertility, or is pregnancy niche? Or, I'm like, no, this is really half the population that we're talking about. And so I think like the market awareness of the need has changed, but then you have so many female founders who are just like, excuse me, this is what is the norm today. Like, this is so inadequate. And taking action to start companies, whether that's in the CPG space or in the services space, but really starting to tackle these unmet needs. And I think beyond just tackling those problems and them being, incredible female founders, starting with actually a real problem. And I think there was so much in kind of the early waves of tech where it's just like, incremental wins or shifts in the market. And like, these are actual huge categories of care or services or needs that have been completely under addressed. Like, take menopause, that's, impacting, again, half the population. We're aging at a really fast rate right now. And there's no standard of care for menopause. You literally go to the HHS website and it's like, menopause is confusing. We don't really know what to do about it. It's this like collection of symptoms. And, this can be a really debilitating life shift for people. And so I'm really excited about seeing this kind of need-based problem solving happening from people who are acutely experiencing that. And then I think in parallel, just on the digital side, what's happening with digital therapeutics is really exciting. So just that category is basically, how do you do what a prescription drug could do, but using more digital interventions? And so, it's kind of taking all the power of habit that we've learned from like Facebook and Instagram and actually putting it towards behavioral health changes or like other, real life changes that can increase prevention. You've seen that in diabetes and other chronic conditions, and it's now moving towards mental health as well. And I know Headspace is getting hopefully soon approval for, their actual app as a drug, a digital therapeutic. So I think those two pieces combined are just going to unlock a lot more from a prevention standpoint than we've seen before.
Wow. Carine, that was incredible. Carine, that was incredible. No, I think the combination of personalized care and also focusing on these real problems, as opposed to just, creating things that are painkillers rather than just vitamins, and then combining that with what you just said around so many of these products and strategies of behavioral science have been utilized to make us more hooked to things that we don't need, but using them in terms of people's best interest. There's a huge opportunity, and I'm excited to see what kind of progress comes out at that. And even thinking about your space and pregnancy, like, shout out to all the moms. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here today. So
exactly.
Thank you for all the work you're doing in terms of supporting the next generation of moms.
Totally. I appreciate
women.
that. And, I think the final thing I would add is just like for anyone who's anyone who's watching this, unsolicited advice is like, while there's going to be a lot of really good coming out of this wave of digital healthcare, we all have to watch out for ourselves because, at the end of the day, no matter how mission driven a company is, like it's still a business trying to make a profit. And so there are some trends that we need to watch out for, like I think the on-demand pharmacy space where we're sending people, prescription drugs over the mail. Like I'm really excited about access to services, but like, let's just make sure we don't get hyper targeted and all of a sudden, you're addicted to something. So as consumers, it's the same thing that's happened with, CPG and other categories. We still have to be our own advocates. So I think there's a lot of good that's going to come out of it, but there's always a shadow.
Yeah. Yeah, I came from the natural food CPG world. I love it. It's exciting. It's a cool space. You get to like, eat your art. But
Yeah,
at the end of the day, like so much of these products, a lot of it I think is actually lipstick on a pig. And you can with today's designers, you can make anything look, you know, sexy and appealing and
totally.
user friendly and delightful. So I think that's great insight too, is like at the end of the day, like just be mindful of what you're consuming, whether it's a product that you eat physically or whether it's a digital piece of content.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
And well, luckily we have companies like JOON to help us navigate the the Wild West. But no, it's really
Thank you.
awesome talking to you, and I'm so excited about what you guys are building. And it makes so much sense. And I'm glad that companies now have ways to like speaking of kind of consumer choice, let individuals dictate what matters to them versus kind of this top down decision that was happening in the past. So really excited to see what you guys are doing and growing.
Thank you. And yeah, there's so many amazing consumer brands like Origin. And I think what we saw was like a stalling in the B2B and enterprise space. And instead, if there's companies like yours that are really driving health outcomes, why not connect people with the best brands and give them the flexibility and the freedom of choice? So so grateful to have you as a friend and so grateful that you were shared your wisdom and knowledge and experiences here today. And let's do some yoga soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.